Welcome back to Club Helensvale on the Gold Coast for the second session of play in the first Trans-Tasman Test. After a good start for New Zealand earlier today, while they lost that women's pairs match we brought to you earlier, importantly they picked up a 4 on the final end, did Selena Smith and Joe Edwards, going down 22-12. And so the women leading their test on differential. That's after the women's triple. The Caitlin Inch triple beat Natasha Scott's triple 24-9. And it was 2 for 2 for the men in the opening session this morning as well here at Club Helensvale. Gary Lawson and Shannon McElroy beating Corey Wedlock and Aaron Wilson 18-15. And the Ali Forsyth skipped triple, getting the better of Aaron Sheriff 16-9. So the Blackjacks men leading Australia 2-0. And while it's 1-1 between the Blackjacks women and the Australian Jackaroos, New Zealand leading on shot differential. Our match we are bringing to you in this second session is men's fours. And we have the New Zealand men's 4 of Crystal Olive, Mike Kernahan, Gary Lawson and Ali Forsyth skip up against Wayne Rudiger, Corey Wedlock, Aaron Tees and Aaron Sheriff, the skip of that 4. And we'll be getting underway at the top of the hour. Everything brought forward because of the expected wet weather, which I'm pleased to report has so far held off. I'm Brenton Vanessa-Roy. I will have the call for you this afternoon alongside, as always, Kevin Hicklin. Welcome back, Kevin. And a game we're very much looking forward to here. The fours, New Zealand, of course, world champions against a very impressive Australian 4.
Yeah, good afternoon, Brenton. And yeah, this is one of the big clashes that one always wants to see. New Zealand going up against Australia in the men's 4s, and we've got the best in action for certain. Ali Forsyth, the defending world champion in the 4s discipline, along with Gary Lawson, Mike Kernahan, of course, who was part of the Ali Forsyth side who won the world championships in Christchurch, and Crystal Olive, who has come in as a replacement for Andrew Kelly, but of course played for New Zealand in the last Trans-Tasman series, and up against a very strong Australian side, Wayne Rudiger, the South Australian, along with Corey Wedlock, Aaron Tees and Aaron Sheriff. And we certainly, in the last Trans-Tasman, the games, the 4s, I think there was a split evenly between New Zealand and Australia. So we're looking for a good result there. And of course, also at the same time this afternoon, we've got Shannon McElroy, the current world champion singles player, back in his discipline, where he's playing Aaron Wilson. Of course, when we had the last Trans-Tasman series, McElroy not available, but now back. So that's another interesting clash, of course. Shannon McElroy up against Aaron Wilson. And Joe Edwards, of course, who lost this morning, will be playing Kelsey Cottrell. Joe Edwards, the #1 world-ranked singles player. And the women's 4 side skipped by the ever-improving, I think the star of the game at the moment, Caitlin Inch, who this morning played superbly well in the women's triple, skipping the women's triples. And she'll have with her, of course, Val Smith, Selena Smith and Wendy Jensen leading, and they'll be up against the Australian combination skipped by Natasha Scott. But our feature match, of course, will be, as Brenton said, the men's 4s, and we're looking forward to bringing you what I'm sure is going to be a fantastic encounter, one of many which we're going to see over the next 3 days in this Trans-Tasman series.
Well, interesting you mentioned the men's singles there, Kevin, because, of course, as Shannon McElroy wasn't available, New Zealand really felt his absence, didn't they? Because Aaron Wilson was 4-0 in the men's singles against Andrew Kelly and then against Jamie Hill, the 2 New Zealand players who played in that discipline. And that was one of the major reasons why Australia were quite comfortable winners in the men's Trans-Tasman in November last year, because of their dominance in that discipline. All the other disciplines were relatively even. Men's singles 4-0 to Australia. Yeah,
that was the big difference. No doubt about that, Brenton. And I'm sure we're going to see a difference with McElroy there. No disrespect, of course, to Andrew Kelly or Jamie Hill. But, you know, McElroy is, of course, the world champion and, of course, the winner of other international events subsequent to the World Championships in Christchurch. Wilson, of course, that very quick, colourful player that he is, that plays all the shots, but McElroy and really applies pressure with the pace that he plays the game at. But McElroy, the true professional that he is, he'll know how to combat that, and I'm sure that'll steady up, that will strengthen up that New Zealand combination, the whole New Zealand side. So, you know, and as we said this morning, Brendan, this event as a whole series is so important to both the New Zealand side and the Australian side, because this is their last run, so to speak, before the side is going to be announced, which I believe will be announced fairly shortly after this event has come to a conclusion. So this is a huge event, not only for these players here, but for some of the players who may not be here, have missed out on this event, but the door's certainly open. If someone doesn't sort of come up to the line in this particular event, I'm sure both New Zealand and Australian selectors, the door's open for sure for those five men, 5 women sides for the World Championships, which will be here, of course, on the Gold Coast in late May of this year.
Yeah, one of those players who was just on the screen previously, Crystal Leave, has a great opportunity here in for Andrew Kelly. Within the last week, Andrew Kelly leaving it as late as he could, but with his firstborn yet to arrive, he withdrew from the Blackjack squad. Of course, one of the form players in New Zealand bowls at the moment, having won the men's singles title at the Somerset National Singles and Pairs, as the horn blows here at Club Helensvale. We are ready to get underway in these 4 disciplines in session number 2 of the first Trans-Tasman Test. Our men's fours match in front of us, our feature, but we'll also keep you up to date with the men's singles, women's singles, and women's fours in action. It was a great start for the New Zealand Blackjacks this morning. Can they continue this afternoon?
Well, we're looking forward to hopefully a continuation of that result this morning. Interesting you're talking about Crystal Leave just then as well, Brenton, because he is playing Premier League up here in Queensland, and he's playing for Inogra, and he's playing with Gary Lawson. Gary Lawson skipping, and Crystal Leave is leading, and they're in fact leading the Brisbane Premier League competition at this point in time. And Crystal Leave and Gary Lawson, that particular fours combination, are unbeaten to date in the Brisbane Premier League. And of course Joe Edwards also playing for Inogra. So Gary Lawson, who's playing number 3 here in this New Zealand side, and Crystal Leave leading, are certainly an informed side in bowls here in Queensland. So the Leave is coming into this event with good form, and I'm sure he's wanting to see that continue to enhance his chances for that New Zealand side when it is announced later in the week, or early next week.
Well, it's certainly the case, isn't it, that most people expecting Ali Forsyth and Gary Lawson to be near certainties. The other half of this 4, Shannon McElroy, another certainty, but the other half, the front end, Crystal Leave and Mike Kernahan, can certainly go a long way to playing their way in. Obviously, Andrew Kelly has done everything he could possibly do, an impressive performer at the Multi-Nations in the Trans-Tasman late last year, and a runner-up in the pairs, along with that singles title at the Somerset National Singles and Pairs in Christchurch at the start of 2020. So,
well, we've got to also remember that side of Crystal Leave, Andrew Kelly and Ali Forsyth in the Multi-Nations, which was a very, very tough competition. They went through unbeaten, and in fact beat the various Australian combinations in total 3 times throughout that event. So Andrew Kelly, and then he backed that up, of course, with a magnificent display at the Somerset Nationals, and is here, as we explained, the reasons why he's not here. But of course, as he has already said, it leaves the door open, and should Crystal Leave or Mike Kernan put their hand up high, well, then that sort of gives the selectors more to choose from.
Yeah, it certainly does. Be welcomed headaches, no doubt, as Mike Kernahan on the mat. Another player who we didn't see at the Trans-Tasman at the end of last year and Multi-Nations, along with Shannon McElroy, because of his work commitments. He has recently retired, though, from full-time work, so going to see but more of him, hopefully, on the bowling green in the lead-up to the World Championships, of course, if he is selected.
He certainly offers a lot, Brendan, insofar as a team player is concerned, and his experience, his international experience. Of course, Kernahan as well, the last New Zealand male to win any medal of any colour at the Commonwealth Games, when he won the bronze medal in the singles way back in 2002 in Manchester. And we haven't as yet been able to improve upon that. But Kernahan, a very proven international player and a very, very strong competitive player. As you watch this bowl of Kernahan's break towards the head with the Australians holding one, just going to get a touch on the jack, and he does, moves it round the corner just on the dead draw. And that's the sort of telling bowls, which we need, Brenton, don't we, do so as you can take the initiative away from the Australians and get some domination of the head yourself. So great bowl there from Mike Kernahan on this opening end of 15.
Yeah, and having a quick chat, sorry Kevin, with Peter Ballas after that first session. He was talking about this men's triples and the men's pairs and saying that they got a lot of consistency off the front, especially with Crystal Olive and Mike Kernahan, and Ali Forsyth, you know, came up with some big shots in the triples when needed, but mostly it was that front end that did the work, and that's often how it goes. If you're consistently better than your opposition in the front, it makes it very, very hard for them to really get any headway.
Well, if we go back, Brendan, right, for example, in the Asia Pacific, the multinations, or the Asia Pacific, when New Zealand in the fours lost that final against Australia, as we see Australians repeat a touch on the jack, where it was New Zealand virtually only had 2 bad ends in the whole game, but yet that cost us. You know, we didn't get the bowls off the front, and at this level of competition, if you don't do that, there comes a time when you can pay for it, and we paid for it dearly in the fours. We dropped a 6 on one particular end and weren't able to recover. So the front 2 players play such a dominant part of the game in making sure that if you're going to score, you can build heads, but you're not going to put yourself in a position where you're going to be dropping big numbers.
As Gary Lawson following this one down, his second bowl of this opening end as it starts wide and stays wide. Not the line he was after. You can see how he was trying to swing it around these front ones and add to the count if possible.
So we'll see. Aaron Tees trying, the Rurula player, trying to play up to that front Australian bowl to turn it into the head. And no doubt right throughout this match we'll certainly see the Australians, they'll certainly be playing with forcing weight at any time possible into the head. And you can't get a much, well, Aaron Sheriff and Aaron Tees. Aaron Sheriff, to me, is still one of the best weight control players in the game internationally. Aaron Tees, a relatively newer player, or younger international player, but a player who is ranked highly in the international scene. As we see now, Ali Forsyth will play on his forehand, playing up towards us here in the commentary position as his bowl now breaks down towards the head. The New Zealand team looking at this as it's going to just run into a short bowl, and you'll see, you can see the call to Aaron Sheriff trying to play with that forcing weight up to the Australian bowl and move that into the head towards the jack. Looked on the wide side as it left, and it is going to be on the wide side. In fact, ran into a front New Zealand bowl, the Crystal Eve bowl it ran into. So Gary Lawson encouraging them, Ali Forsyth, stay on that forehand side. Of course, this combination, Forsyth and Lawson, won New Zealand titles playing together, so they're a very, very formidable and experienced combination. As this is a good bowl of Ali Forsyth, ran into the front bowl. It's a good and bad bowl, in fact, because it does allow, on the other hand, now possibly for Aaron Sheriff to play that split shot with weight down through the 2 counting bowls and get movement on the jack down back towards the back of the rink, where there's a few Australian bowls sitting there.
I'm not sure if they are those 2 of the shot or not. It's quite hard to tell with camera angles, obviously, Kevin, whether they are those short bow. Here we see another slightly different angle. Yeah, it's hard to tell who's actually got shot at the moment.
Well, I think we'll get an idea from the weight that
correct
Aaron Sheriff plays and what hand he plays. I think we'll give an indication of where or who holds the shot. Aaron Sheriff standing on the mat, obviously going to play with weight, because I heard them saying play with weight, it will hold up, and he's playing with that well-known searching weight that we see Aaron Tees play with Aaron Sheriff play with, but he's going to go under the head with weight, with that weight that
one
indicates
down indicated Aaron Tees, I believe. So New Zealand on the board first as Crystal Eve picks up the mat and has the jack. So 1-0 New Zealand after the first of 15 ends in this men's fours matchup. This is the second session of the first Trans-Tasman test here at Club Helensvale. We can continue to report that the clouds aren't too ominous. It is overcast, certainly a lot cooler than it was yesterday in the scorching hot day when they were practicing here at Club Helensvale some 24 hours ago.
I did get report to me before, Brenton, that at one stage yesterday afternoon when the New Zealand team were practicing here, it was 40 degrees here yesterday afternoon, and it certainly felt that around the areas that I was in on the Gold Coast. It was stifling hot, but we haven't got that today. Very pleasant conditions as we see this first bowl of Crystal Leaves now on the second end, break down towards the head, and it'll go in behind the head by about a metre. And going back to that very first head then, Brendan, even if the second bowl didn't count, the good thing which it did do with Aaron Shearer still having a bowl to play is it gave New Zealand another bowl on the head. It didn't leave them completely exposed to the head, which is what you just simply can't do against the Australians. So here's the leave holding shot, and he'll play now his second bowl.
Yeah, I must mention as well is there's pretty much one change to this New Zealand 4 that played at the Trans-Tasman November last year, with Mike Kernahan in effect coming in for Jamie Hill / Andrew Kelly, who played in the 4 at the latter stages after starting the Trans-Tasman playing the singles. And likewise Australia have the one change. So they had Barry Lester playing off the front, but now Wayne Rudiger, who just played his second bowl there, now leading for this Australian side. So a chance for him to press his case for world bowls as well. A
big chance for him, because it was no doubt, in talking to a number of players, it was a surprise when Barry Lester was left out of this Trans-Tasman side. Been part of the Australian side now for a while, has Barry Lester, now at the Burleigh Heads Club just down the road here on the Gold Coast. So Rudiger, of course, played for Australia before in the World Championships. It's his opportunity in this Trans-Tasman as we watch Mike Kernahan's bowl just go by Crystal Eve. The New Zealand bowl sitting on the centre line was indicated by Ali Forsyth, that shot. So one on and one over from the New Zealand side as we watch Corey Wedlock. He's going to run by as well. Not by much, comes back to the centre line.
You can see the speed on the mat already from the Australians, haven't you? With
very much so.
You've got obviously Corey Wedlock, Aaron Tees and Aaron Sheriff. 3 of the quicker players going around. Obviously Aaron Wilson being the other one who's playing singles alongside Shannon McElroy.
Well, one of the really good things as well about having Mike Kernahan in the side is the gamesmanship that he also brings, and he can slow the game down, and he's able to do that successfully just with various bits and pieces which Kernahan has that ability to do. And because the last thing New Zealand want to do really is play the Australian pace game, because they're good at it, but you just got to slow them down.
You want to play your game, don't you?
Absolutely.
That's not the New Zealand style.
No, it's not.
Be a bit more deliberate in their approach. Can bring you up to date with the early stages of the other disciplines as well. In the women's 4s, Australia, after the first end, 5-0, they lead New Zealand. So great start for Australia there. And the Scott combination against Caitlin Inch 4. Joe Edwards and Kelsey Cottrell, 3 apiece in the race to 21 in the women's singles. And I believe Shannon McElroy has the first blood against Aaron Wilson in the men's singles. I'll bring you an up-to-date score very shortly.
And go back, Brendan, to that game of singles that we saw. Joe Edwards, Kelsey Cottrell. And we forget that game, and of course Kelsey Cottrell was in fact leading Joe Edwards 18-3 at Broadbeach, and Joe Edwards all but climbed up and actually nearly clinched victory in that encounter. So these two will certainly have, and of course Kelsey Cottrell, been around a long time, and now inside running for the Australian singles berth with Karen Murphy not being there, so she want to have a good, she want to certainly put on a good performance here, because big boots to fill with Karen Murphy not being here.
Yeah, I can confirm Shannon McElroy 3-0 in the race to 21 against Aaron Wilson. So the world champion up against the Commonwealth Games champion, of course. So it's a real blockbuster matchup. And if you've just joined us, it wasn't good reading for New Zealand in the men's singles at the last Trans-Tasman, and Shannon McElroy's absence. They lost all 4 matches to Aaron Wilson in the men's singles. So certainly a discipline that they'll want to get a bit of a better run in if that contest here and for the men to win the Trans-Tasman for the first time in a long time.
It would be a long time, and a good start, as I thank you, Crystal Lee, just pulling the shirt of Wayne Rudiger, just to move across mate a bit so the cameras can be seen as Mike Kernan goes and drops himself in there, but we can still see as we watch Ali Forsyth now playing on his forehand. And New Zealand holding the shot as they watch this bowl of Forsyth now breaking towards the head, and looks as though it's breaking on the outside of the head, lacked a wee bit of weight. So again, we're going to see Aaron Sheriff. He will play with weight, reaching up to the Gary Lawson Crystal Leaf bowl, endeavour to play with weight through them or onto his own. The Australian bowl out in front of the head.
Taking some time on the mat though. We talk about the pace they play, but the first end and now in the second end, Aaron Sheriff taking his time on the mat, weighing up his options before delivering. Now playing on the forehand side. Looks like he is playing with some weight.
And New Zealand, don't think that bowl's going to make any difference. No, definitely on the wide side, but we can see that weight that has been played. Brenton certainly playing with that yard of weight to play through the head. So it's important now for New Zealand they get a bowl down in between the Australian bowls, which are in behind the head. They match those bowls, those two bowls. That's what Gary Lawson's indicating. Let's get to those bowls that are just in behind the head, and you can of course count if you get in between those bowls, and that's what Ali Forsyth will endeavour to do, though he is talking about playing some other shot. But I think at this stage of the game, the obvious thing is to the way how Forsyth's standing on the mat.
Don't think New Zealand has a shot here,
No,
Kevin.
that doesn't appear as though that's correct, Brenton, and there's weight coming from Forsyth, and well, we'll see what happens here in a moment, but quite strange shot really. We'll see what happens after this Aaron Sheriff bowl, but there's certainly a chance for Australia to build, or well, score a good number if they can get the jack over to the side of the centre line, the 1, 2, 3, 4.
Do we think the bowl to the right of the jack is maybe the shot, or the one almost on the centre line, just below the jack?
More than likely you'd think the one, and here's Sheriff now on the drive, and
it's hard to know what the situation
who
is.
Who knows what's going on. And you're right, they're going to that side bowl first, Brendan, the one that we spoke about. Crystal Lee's got the mat. He's confident New Zealand.
Okay, so New Zealand have the shot, so maybe Ali was playing for more there as Gary Lawson's towel disappears.
So we'll know in a minute, but yes, the leave has got the jack, so we'll see the scoreboard change in but a moment. So quite strange shots played by both skips really. So the jack has been delivered by Crystal Eve up towards the club end here.
It's just a one. So 2-0. New Zealand now leading after 2 of the 15 ends. Men's fours. Second session of this first Trans-Tasman test here at Club Helensvale. Shannon McElroy leading Aaron Wilson 4-0 in the race to 21. The men's singles alongside in the adjoining rink. I think New Zealand's successfully on the board in the women's fours, 5-2. They trail Australia, and Joe Edwards leading Kelsey Cottrell in the women's singles, first to 21, 4-3. She is leading Kelsey Cottrell. So New Zealand in a good position in 3 of the 4 matches.
So good opening bowl from Crystal Lee. The New Zealand lead sits just alongside the jack at jack level. The lead, of course, the former Auckland player, will play down on his forehand, definitely holding the shot. The Wayne Rudiger bowl just went by a few feet. So here's the Lee's bowl on its way now. It looks to be on the wider side, and it's going to go over the head. Ali Forsyth will be happy with that. Sits virtually on the centre line. And that's the sort of heads you've got to start building against Australia. Get one on, then make sure you've got some cover on the back as we watch the Wayne Rudiger bowl. Encouraged from Aaron Sheriff to break all the way back towards the jack, and comes right back to the centre line, and going on what the angles are, that could well be the shot, because it is difficult to actually get a precise view on, because the angles of the cameras, as Brenton said. So Mike Kernan, he doesn't like that bolt. I can assure you, he's let that go really on the wide side, and it's staying way out on the wide side. Most uncharacteristic by Mike Kernan.
That's probably only barely in play, isn't it? Very wide, poor bowl, uncharacteristic, as you say. Is trying to pile a bit of pressure on in response as Corey Wedlock after the opening from Kernahan. It's a near touch, and that one just slides by, but right on the centre line. Now obstructing the jack. We can't see it from our camera angle, so the jack right behind that Corey Wedlock bowl, probably a couple of inches in front of that bowl.
So Kernahan, he'll endeavour to try and reach to that counting bowl. It's on a good line. As the Kernahan bowls are going to get all the way to the jack. It's certainly on a good line, and that'll make a touch on the jack as well. Good bowl there by the New Zealand number 2. Certainly make amends for that wide bowl that he played on his first, as we watch the Australian Corey Wedlock, who plays so quick, trying to play up through the bowls with that sort of weight that they play, but going to slip by very, very narrow. So Forsyth's obviously confident New Zealand got the shot, so he's indicating to Gary Lawson, draw to my feet, in behind to mix in between the two yellow Australian bowls. As where, of course, Corey Wedlock was trying to move or make contact to get the bowl or jack to move to that area. The Lawson bowl now, this looks on a good line as well. How far is it going to run? Ali Forsyth just trying to get it to stop, sits in between those two bowls, and that's a good head really, Brendan, because it mixes them up, which is...
Well, exactly. If it does change, if Aaron Sheriff's able to play a big bowl when he gets there, they only might drop one or two. It's not going to be a big number because you're matching the Australian bowls.
And it's good play by the New Zealand side. As we watch now, closer this time is Wedlock trying to get to the jack clean. He's just going to go through the gap, went right through. But for your viewers watching at home, you can see the weight that the Australians are going to play. And they'll continue playing with this weight right throughout the whole game. To try and make contact with shots. That's the way they play the game, and that's how once you get the shot, what you've got to play then is to try and negate those opportunities for Australia to score the big numbers with that forcing weight, which they'll certainly play.
Yeah, and they're doing it because they're playing catch-up on ends. New Zealand
Correct.
is, because of their work of their front two, and Lalive and Kernahan have more often than not, when it's come to the back-end players, had the lead, and so the Australian players have had to play with this weight, and they do it very, very well, but you're not going to be successful every time.
Certainly not. And so a wider line here from Aaron T's trying to get to the bowls. Looks as though it's just going to sit out on the wider side, is it? It is just gets past on the wide side, and again pushes another Australian bowl back in towards the head. New Zealand might be too concerned about that because New Zealand have got bowls in behind the head, and it's not really worthwhile. If New Zealand are holding the shot, it's not worthwhile trying to build up many scoring numbers on this head because of the way how the head sits. And it's like a game of checkers. You could say there is a gamble shot there, which perhaps they're looking at to play with draw weight, to play onto the Mike Kernahan bowl, turn the Australian bowl out through the head, line 3. That is a chance. But of course, if you're under green and you get and Forsyth got the jack, it would only move back to where the Australian bowls are. So we'll see what Forsyth does. Left-hander looks as though he's going to play on his forehand, and he's really saying to Australia, as Brenton rightly said, we're holding the shot. You guys go back and do the work.
Yeah, you can see all the players there in the bunch here, all looking over at the men's singles matchup, which is on the rink alongside between Shannon McElroy and Aaron Wilson. McElroy, I can tell you, is leading 6-0 in the race to 21, but I think Aaron Wilson may have an opportunity here. It's 4-all in the women's singles.
Go and get into the bowl, and here's the advantage of what we just spoke about, Brendan. You get the shot was there for Australia, play across the head, squeeze the jack. He did that, but New Zealand were able to counter that from the bowls that they got in behind the head. And that's the way how New Zealand can really play strongly as a team, and that's where it makes it, as you rightly said, it makes it so difficult for Australia because you can't get those shots all the time. So well played by New Zealand.
Yeah, and by the sounds of things, that was pretty much the case in the men's triples, because New Zealand were getting an advantage off the front, that while Australia had very number of decent bowls in the area, didn't quite get the results, just like that one. It was in the area, just didn't get the result they wanted.
I can't stress enough how important that front end is in your side and getting your bowls back to the centre line, which obviously Chris Leave and Mike Kernan did this morning, of course, in that triples game, and they're doing it again here. And now, of course, endeavouring to cut the options off for the scoring chances for Australia, as Mike Kernan looks back at us here in the commentary position. Just need one Australian to move now, but
it's pretty handy having Chris Leave as our sort of director's assistant, isn't it?
It is very handy.
Stage manager,
Yes.
pulling people into the right positions. Oh, a false start there from Aaron Sheriff.
The indication is that Sheriff is going to attack to the jack to try and get the jack to the ditch.
Yeah, that's why Forsyth played with weight, putting a bit of cover. Is he on target here? White knocks out 1 and 2. This is 1 down, I believe. Yes, 1 down is the signal from the Australians. So 1 more for New Zealand. 3-0. They now lead after 3 of the 15 ends. Men's fours match up here. Can let you know that Aaron Wilson is on the board in the men's singles matchup alongside Shannon McElroy of New Zealand, now leading Aaron Wilson 6-1. In the women's fours, it is Australia leading New Zealand 5-2, and Joe Edwards is now leading Kelsey Cottrell in the women's singles 6-4 in the race to 21 there. So New Zealand up in 3 of the 4 matches in the early stages of the second session, first Trans-Tasman test.
Yeah, very early stages, Brendan, but very good start, very strong start, a confident start by the New Zealand side. And I also like talking to Peter Ballas as well. He was saying to me that the side's been training well, they've been practicing well. And what's impressed me with both, although we didn't see the men's triple this morning, but the indications that I got and watching this men's fours is they're playing the game strategically, and you can play that providing the front gives you a good start. You don't have to score 3, 4, 5. If they only play 15 ends, of course, in these fours. So if you can gnaw away singles, 1s and 2s sort of thing, it does make it challenging for the opposition. And to date, what we have seen as the New Zealand front, Leave and Kernahan in both disciplines, has certainly put New Zealand in a strong position, as no doubt we saw this morning in the women's triples with Wendy Jensen and Val Smith in their very convincing win over Australia in round 1 this morning.
Yeah, it certainly was. They picked up a 3 on the final end to win 24-9. And after the women's pair, Selena Smith and Joe Edwards picked up a 4 on the final end of their match. Even though they lost, that really flipped the differential. So New Zealand went from heading into this final end of both matches being down on differential. Now it's 1-1 results, but New Zealand up in differential, I think, plus 6 or 7.
Now we've just seen here Chris Leave play 2 what I would call wayward bowls, and straight away Australia jump in, holding shot. Now Ali Forsyth indicating to Mike Kernahan, you get round here, play to my foot. You can see the wind there now. If you look at Ali Forsyth and Aaron Sheriff's trousers or their shorts, you can see them getting really buffeted around by the wind out there. And looking at the flags, there's plenty of wind out there as Ali Forsyth is just trying to get the Mike Kernahan bolt to slow down and go past by a metre and a bit. And these are the ends that we were talking about before, Brendan, how you can very quickly get yourself into a danger zone if that front doesn't give you that start. And no disrespect at all to our New Zealand leading 2, but they know very well that if you leave the gate open, you can pay quite heavily.
And of course we are playing in a different direction to what we did in the first session of this Trans-Tasman test. We're playing east to west, west to east. We're now playing north-south, south-north, to and from the club rooms here, which you can see on screen. Our broadcasting position just to the right undercover. We're expecting, weather to be a big issue, but, fingers crossed so far. So good.
I just wonder as well, Brenton, as I watch this bowler, Mike Kernahan's now endeavour to break down towards the head. It won't come all the way back to the centre line. The wind, it seems to be blowing all around the place. You look at the flags over there and then just look generally on the green. So it's a very, very buffeting wind that obviously it can hold bowls out as well. But here's New Zealand now 3 down. So it's imperative here. Gary Lawson, come down on your backhand. Try and get second shot. Come down past that Australian front bowl. And he can draw either just around the bowl or inside the bowl on his backhand to get second shot. Obviously Forsyth thinks it's a kinder draw on that hand and you're not going to get tangled up on that front Australian bowl. As we watch the Lawson bowl now, is it going to come back far enough? It's on a good line, this bowler. Gary Lawson's up, breaks towards the head. Have a look at this from Lawson. That's what the master can do.
It's fine bowl that picked its way through the gap. The port, as you say, on the right hand side of the screen and sitting on the jack, and again forcing the Aussies to respond. Can they come up with the answer this time?
Straight away, playing with a lot of weight, and the removal of that bowl there by the Australian bowl moved over the head is actually helpful for New Zealand because it just reduces the target slightly. So Lawson again will come down on his backhand, try and get to that Australian bowl, but that first bowler Lawson's, he just drew round the front bowl inside the back, the bowl in behind the jack, and drew a superb bowl. As you watch his second bowl, has to get under this bowler. Crystal leaves, doesn't look like it's going to, runs into it. That's not all bad though, because it does
very good. Promotes the bowl and doesn't give that shoulder that you talk about to play off. That was there. There's still that Lawson bowl, but it's probably a touch too wide to be of assistance for the Australians.
But see, automatically, because that bowl moved, it just made the weight line change for the Australians, and they're just going to run into the New Zealand bowl. So on that bowl there, we saw Aaron Tees endeavouring to draw. I'm sure now Forsyth he'll follow the Gary Lawson bowl, I'm sure, on his forehand, and he'll try and get in between and down towards this other Australian bowl. But again, New Zealand has to change over, holding the shot, and not in a vulnerable position of dropping a big number should Aaron Sheriff be able to convert the head around. And as we thought, Forsyth playing his forehand, trying to get down to this Australian bowl, which is just in behind the head. Just ran just shy of weight, was certainly on a good line. Sheriff endeavouring to play virtually a jar shot or touch the jack to the one bowl of Australia, but no, that's going to go by as well. So you might see, might be difficult for Ali Forsyth, in fact, Brendan, to actually get a good result past those two bowls, so he might actually try and get deeper down into the head. But Lawson indicating, let's try and turn over one of those New Zealand bowls, turn it into the head, and give New Zealand bowl another bowl on the head, leading 3-0 as we come to the end of the fourth end, with New Zealand holding shot when Gary Lawson down on the head drew a toucher. So we need you, it is going right to the back, as we spoke about before, Brendan, going deeper with that bowl. Very sensible play by New Zealand. Hats off to them.
Yeah, I think Lawson there just nodding in agreement with Mike Kernahan and Chris Lee. So obviously as a team they decided what was the best result, while Lawson initially said, play on to the two black bowls just to the ride the jack and try and promote one of them. I think the whole team went, no, I don't think that's the best option here.
Interesting. When you've got a bit of heat on Australia now. That bowl of Aaron Sheriff was virtually played before that bowl of Ali Forsyth virtually came to rest. He was all set to go. So it just highlights that New Zealand are putting the pressure on, and there was no doubt that Mike Kernan and perhaps Chris Lee as well had a wee bit of say then, and that's good communication in the side. Let's stay away from the head and let's get right down to the back, which they duly did. and they held the control of the head after Gary Lawson played that very good bowl.
And that Lawson bowl got New Zealand the shot, so 4-0. They now lead after 4 of the 15 ends. Men's fours action. Men's singles alongside Shannon McElroy leading Aaron Wilson 7-2 in the race to 21. And the women's fours has tightened up after Australia picked up a 5 on the opening end. It's now 5-4, so New Zealand coming back, and Kelsey Cottrell has got out to a bit of a lead, so turn the tables there. I think last report we had for you, Joe Edwards was 6-4 up. It's now Kelsey Cottrell 10-6 leading Joe Edwards in the women's singles, so it's 2 apiece now in this session. The men's, though, going New Zealand's way, just as it did this morning. Looking to continue on. It's been a, so far, a very good start for the Black Jacks men.
Certainly has, as we come back to this fours, and we see New Zealand leading 4-0 after 4 ends, 4 singles obviously, as we watch Chris Leave now falling short slightly with his first bowl on this, the 5th end, 5 to 15. Is it breaking? It hasn't got the weight either this time, and this is I can't stress enough how important it is that you get that weight right in and around the head.
Well, now it's up to Wayne Rudiger to capitalise here and to put one on the head to really make the most of the miss by Crystal Leave.
And changing his hand, of course, was Rudiger and drawn right to the centre line.
Probably not as close as he'd want to be, though.
No, it wasn't. Still plenty of room for Mike Kernahan. Plays backhand, the Dunedin player. Certainly one of New Zealand's best draw players. No doubt about that. As we watch the Kernahan bowl now, breaking down towards the head. Ali Forsyth keen on this one as it breaks in towards the head, and it's going to be just on the, and it falls short of the jack, but that'll be good enough for shot. A perfect arc into the head. And Wedlock will try and play down, get to the Kernahan bowl, or get under it and get a touch of the jack. That's exactly what he's trying to do, trying to get to the jack, and he's going to do it and moves the jack, and that's the weight that we were talking about, Brenton, which they're so much like playing.
Well, it's only so many they could miss, isn't it? Because they've been
Absolutely.
not far away with several bowls, the Australians, and you knew they were going to find their target at some stage, and Corey Wedlock was the man after good first bowl from Kernahan. Great response, trailing the jack, and now Kernahan changing hand.
Just going to go by on the quick side. It'll be 2 to Australia at this point. Wedlock so quick on the mat. Play his second bowl. Looks to be on the wide side. And of course plays out but it's going to count as it breaks in towards the head now. And indicating from Ali Forsyth, that's jack high, that last bowl, so just endeavour to draw to that last bowl of Corey Wedlock's. That will help the cause greatly. So here's Lawson on his forehand, drew a great shot on that last end. How's the weight on this bowl as it breaks down towards the head? Ali Forsyth trying to encourage it, but no, it's going to be short of weight.
Yeah, looked a good line, didn't it? But just didn't quite have enough weight to make it towards the jack. So really for the first time, you must say, in this match, New Zealand now under pressure. Australia now dictating terms because of that Corey Wedlock bowl, and because they didn't get that start, they wanted New Zealand off the front.
Absolutely, and you know, Australia holding a very strong position on the head, and especially as well because that first bowl of Gary Lawson's fell short, and if you look at where it fell short right on that draw line, and that's an indication as well from the Australians that that bowl as well counts, that tease bowl. So it's imperative that Gary Lawson does not worry about getting the shot. Second shot will be very, very handy here. As this bowl of Lawson's now, does it got more weight? It's got to get past this Australian bowl clean and rest inside the head. It's not going to. It's going to skip away. I don't think that'll cut anything out. So
it might just be the fourth, really, isn't it now?
Yeah.
You think Australia's certainly still holding 3 there. And with just Ali Forsyth now to play, Australia with 3 bowls remaining. The first of those three coming from Aaron Tees. A chance to pile on more pressure on the New Zealand skip.
Well, the big thing now, of course, for Ali Forsyth is he's got to forget about actually the shot itself, but just get out to this bowl on the side here of Australia's and endeavour to get second shot. That's what we need to do, because these numbers are starting to count big now for Australia on the head. That would count as well.
Yeah, you think that's 4 now?
4, maybe 5, certainly 4 anyway, Brenton for sure. So second shot has to be the go here for Ali Forsyth. All that good work on those first 4 ends can be all undone very quickly.
This is where it's important to, like you say, Kevin, not worry about the shot. Let's just get a good second, even a good third if that's
absolutely
the best you can do. Just make sure you don't undo all the good work from the first 4 ends on one end.
So here's now Forsyth on his backhand. It's on a tight line. Just question, how's that weight now as it's breaking down towards the head? Got to get past everything to cut anything out. And it's not, it might have cut one out.
Yeah, look at all those bowls for New Zealand, all short. There's a bowl just below the graphics from Mike Kernahan. But other than that, everything is short.
And so that's a saviour, that bowl there of Aaron Sheriff's won't count. So the New Zealand, 3 of them all together, New Zealand team, you can see them bunched there, the side of the head, urging now Ali Forsyth on his backhand to get second shot. He's on a wider line than he was with his first. And how's the weight of this as it comes down towards the Gary Lawson bowl? If he gets past the Lawson bowl, he runs into it. He's a chance of cutting some out. No, he didn't. And I think that would be 3 or 4 still. So, as you and I spoke about, Brenton, it starts with the first 2 bowls.
Yeah, Corey Wedlock this time got the better of his opposite. It was a good bowl from Kernahan, but then Wedlock's was better. He managed to trail the jack, change the head, and since then New Zealand haven't been able to quite find their range. Australia have been adding to the count. Now Aaron Sheriff, chance to perhaps inflict more misery and potentially level even, take the lead here.
Could possibly. No, we did. You know, our last 4 bowls played, we didn't get 1 bowl over the head, and that's, you pay the price for that. And that'll certainly count. That bowl, Sheriff's for sure. And
1, 2, 3.
Well, there's more to come out yet.
It might be a measure for the 4th. Well, they're going to knock that one away 4. So we're all tied at least. Yeah, 4 I think it's been decided, or is it 5 even?
5 I think.
Yeah, so big end for Australia. So New Zealand, after picking up singles on the first 4 ends, give up a 5 on the 5th end, and they now trail Australia 5-4 in this men's 4s, and we're now a third of the way through the contest. And well, that's what we talk about in these games, trying to just minimise the damage when you're not having a good end, but unable to do that, unfortunately, New Zealand. And Australia take the lead in the men's singles. Shannon McElroy leading Aaron Wilson 8-3. In the women's 4s, New Zealand, after dropping a 5 on the first end, now 7-5 up after 5 of the 15 ends there. And in the women's singles, it is Kelsey Cottrell leading Joe Edwards 11. The score's just changing over, 11-7 in the race to 21.
So New Zealand men's 4s, just got to put that behind you. Forget about it. But it just sort of highlights again this bowl of Crystal Leaves. Looks as though it's a good metre short. And just watch that. What's a metre and a half short? You know, just watch that body language of Ali Forsyth. And this is when it's imperative that New Zealand regroup real quick after dropping that 5 and just get back into the game. And that's really in the hand of Crystal Eve to make sure that he gets past his own short bowl and draws close to the jack, to the Wayne Rudiker bowl. So on his backhand is the lead. Australia leading by 5 shots to 4.
They've just got to forget about the previous end.
Absolutely.
Don't they? It's only a one-shot game now. They've played well for the majority of this match. They've just got to dismiss it and get back to what they were doing. As that one, after a bit of a deflection, ends up on the centre line.
So this is where it ends like this after a big 5. This is where the players like Mike Kernahan really got to come to their fore and knuckle down and make sure, right, boys, come on. We've got to do better than this. And let's get bowls on the head. And straight away, yeah, you can see the Australians are got their drawing game going. They've been, the previous 4 ends, of course, they've been playing run shots and all sorts of things to try and get to the head. But all of a sudden they score a 5 and the whole dimension of the game changes very quickly as we watch Mike Kernahan now play his first bowl on this, the 5th end, and Ali Forsyth indicating just come a bit further. Runs into the Crystal Leaf bowl, gets a clap from Ali Forsyth. Maybe shot, may be not shot, but no bowls over the head yet. Just cast that word of caution. Another good bowl here from Wedlock. This goes in behind the head and will fall in for shot for sure. So that's where New Zealand have got to play to. They've got to play into those Australian bowls, make sure they, in that group of 3 there, that this bowler Mike Kernahan is up to the head and amongst those bowls, certainly on a wider line than his first. And it breaks down towards the jack now to these bowls. And this is a good bowl from Kernahan. This is what you wanted. So it sits in behind the bowls. It's not shot, but certainly just gives more cover around the head, Brendan.
Oh, it certainly does. It is a great bowl from Mike Kernahan. Much needed. First 3 New Zealand bowls all short of the head. Needed something beyond it, and that wasn't far away from actually taking a shot, just slipping past the Australian shot bowl. And it's a good second or perhaps third shot for New Zealand, and now something for the back end players to work on.
The good thing which it does now, Brendan, it gives New Zealand a scoring chance, because Gary Lawson, now it's a shot Ali Forsyth indicating, if he can get down now and turn the yellow Australian bowl through the head, then all of a sudden New Zealand are left lane holding 3 shots and would have bowls in behind the head. So here's the Lawson bowl now, trying to get down to that Australian shot bowl. It's on a good line now as it breaks in towards the head, just going to sit on the bowl, is it, or going to touch on it? Got a touch on it, pushed it out. Good effort there by Lawson, and even if we don't get shot out of it, certainly gives New Zealand a bowl, good bowl in behind the head. Having a good look as the Australians to see what the position is. No, they don't know who's got shot. Aaron Sheriff indicating could be anybody's. But it's amazing, isn't it, Brendan, how one bowl can change the whole head around. You know, New Zealand were looking very vulnerable there again, and one bowl from Mike Kernahan can all of a sudden just change it all around very quickly.
Yeah, now with 2 New Zealand bowls and amongst the Australian bowls as well, really limiting the Aussie options to score more than 1.
Absolutely, and it's interesting now. See, Mike Kernahan, this is where Kernahan to me is such an integral part of a team. He offers so much in his gamesmanship and advice, shot play, and there he is having a good look with Ali Forsyth of who's got shot. But the best scoring chance for New Zealand is to get to that Australian bowl, and still a measure according to Ali Forsyth. So Ali Forsyth indicating just exactly what we were talking about for Gary Lawson to try and get down to those Australian bowls. Certainly on a wider line is Gary Lawson, needs to be inside that bowl, just going to go outside it by a fraction. Certainly heading in the right direction.
Yeah, may have just knocked that yellow bowl to be the shot bowl now as well.
Strong, yeah, good chance of that, of course, Brendan, because that was one of the bowls, of course, which they were looking at.
Not far away though was Lawson. He's a bit disappointed with himself, but not a bad effort. Now it's up to the skips. Aaron Sheriff. on the mats, playing on the forehand side. Looking to draw in between that short black bowl of Lalive and one of the Australian bowls. He's going to come up short though. The line was good, didn't quite have the weight.
So the New Zealand combination standing, having a look. What's the best shot to play?
So a big conversation there between three pretty experienced players with
Very
Gary
experienced
Lawson, Mike Kernahan and Ali Forsyth.
All world champions at various times.
Yeah, especially with Kernahan and Lawson, old enough to be fathers for three of the Australian players with Wedlock and Tees, both in their 20s.
So here's Forsyth now on the drive. Well, that got rid of, obviously down with New Zealand. And
somehow found his way through that small gap there.
Very small gap to get to the...
Trying to get the jack, I think.
But the indication was, Brenton, wasn't it, the bowl, the Australian bowl out to the side of the head is the most likely bowl to be shot. And as so Aaron Sheriff now, certainly on a wider line, is this bowl of Sheriff's, the Australians trying to get it all the way back to the head, and in fact is going to lock on. Now I think we're going to see Forsyth drive those two bowls. Looks like the way it looks like on the mat. They're going to try and drive down to those two Australian bowls sitting behind the head. And that's what he's playing. But, wow. Well, we might be lucky here and score one, actually.
Yeah, certainly, because that orange bowl of Gary Lawson is the tee, and I believe that bowl has been killed coming out. And I believe it is one for New Zealand. Assume Ali Forsyth shaking his head, but Chris Lalive has got the mat and the jack, so one for New Zealand, and we're all tied up again. 5 apiece between Australia and New Zealand as Ali Forsyth gets quite a big dose of luck.
Yep, very much so, because I think the body language of Forsyth was disgusted with himself, because that drive was not even close really to, one would think, what he was playing for.
Well, yeah, assuming he was trying to get rid of those two bowls out to the left of our pitcher previously, and certainly it was way off, wasn't he? It was more in line with the jack, and in the end, getting a big piece of the jack as it spurted out, killed it. It would have been replanted at the 2 metre mark, where New Zealand, fortunate for them, made a Gary Lawson bowl.
Interesting, New Zealand has shortened the length of the jack up quite considerably, and Chris Lalive playing his first bowl, draws jack level, 5 all. We sit now after 6 of the 15 ends as we watch the Wayne Rudiger bowl. Is it going to sit on the Chris Lalive bowl, and does, and leaves Lalive's bowl sitting jack level.
Yeah, can bring you up to date with the other scores as well. Shannon McElroy leading Aaron Wilson in the men's singles, 11-5 in the race to 21. The Australian women's 4 leading New Zealand 9-7. And Kelsey Cottrell is now leading Joe Edwards of New Zealand 11-10 in the women's singles. That, of course, another race to 21. So a couple of very tight contests going on in the women's matches. So at the moment, New Zealand leading 2, Australia leading 1, and 1 level. This match in front of us, men's 4s.
Chris Lalive drew right on top, sat in behind the jack. Wayne Rudiger, his second bowl, in fact, rested on the Chris Lalive bowl. Now we'll see Mike Kernahan. He'll come down on his forehand side, trying to sit on the Wayne Rudiger bowl as well, or to get a touch on the jack to make shot of it under the line. Kernahan turned his back on that bowl very, very quickly. He wouldn't have liked that. It's a second wayward bowl from Mike Kernahan. Most unusual. Perhaps got a big puff of wind, or gust of wind, I should say, as we watch this bowl of Corey Wedlock with Australia holding 1. It's on a good line. The Wedlock bowl just going to break under the head and sit alongside it. And the indication from Ali Forsyth, you just get down here and draw the shot. So we'll see Kernahan do that, endeavour to do that on his backhand. try and sit down towards the what is the counting bowls. I'll get to the jack. Looks to be on the wide side, and it will be. That's fine. It's past the head by a good meter. It's good for New Zealand. They've got the opportunity now. They can play with that wee bit more of searching weight. Australia definitely holding most likely two, as we watch now Corey Wedlock from the Warilla Club. Of course, the club where Seamus Curtin will be based. Another good bowl coming here from Wedlock. Sits, in fact, right on top of what was the second or third shot. So Australia here, Brendan, putting the pressure very quickly on this New Zealand fours with 3 bowls in and around the head.
Yeah, certainly are. Much more comfortable in that position, playing from the front rather than playing catch-up as they were on the first 4 ends, where New Zealand were able to dictate the terms. Now can Gary Lawson change the situation, finds his way through those Australian bowls without coming up with a touch. Unfortunate there.
Certainly on a great line was that bowler Gary Lawson's to get to either sit on one of those Australian counting bowls or to move the jack. It was certainly in that target zone, but just would in fact touch nothing. So no doubt we'll see Australia, I'm picking they'll try now and just play in behind the head, trying to get to where those 3 New Zealand bowls are, down behind the head. Aaron Sheriff indicating he's quite happy with that because that bowl has gone down and behind the head, so I'm sure we'll see.
Yeah, expecting New Zealand to play with weight, so that's why Aaron Sheriff was very happy with that bowl from Aaron Tees to go back down the green. Of course, there's a much shorter end.
So I think Forsyth indicating that Gary Lawson perhaps play with a wee bit more weight to get that hold up and get that split. And he is playing with that more weight to get down to that split towards the jack. He'll get one of those bowls this time, that's for sure. And he got one of the Australian bowls out of the head, leaving Australia at line 2. Lawson trying to get down in amongst the nest of 3 or to move the jack. And I'm pretty sure we'll see Forsyth. He won't be frightened to attack that position. And I'm sure we'll see Tees still trying to get in behind the head, get amongst these New Zealand bowls. That's what he's endeavouring to do. So the chance rally Forsyth, will he go full drive at the 2 bowls, or to play with that searching weight, Brendan, on what is his forehand to try and get them down to where the New Zealand bowls are, sitting in behind the head, 2 down in New Zealand?
Well, you can guarantee it's going to be a positive approach.
Won't be
Forsyth plays his game.
So he's Forsyth on the mat, as we said, playing what is forehand. And he is playing with that searching weight to try and get to the jack. The New Zealand side, they're keen on this bowl as it breaks towards the head, gets that touch on the jack. Not quite sure what the story is out there. I know there was a Crystal Eve bowl out there, and there is.
So you think New Zealand's holding 2, at least, maybe 3. Depends on this yellow bowl out here to the just in front of where Aaron Tees just walked.
Very good conversion bowl there from Ali Forsyth. The opportunity was on to play that. So here's Sheriff. Well, I'm sure he's trying to draw, but he's outside the draw line and in fact ran into a New Zealand bowl, moved that in closer towards the head. Whether that makes any difference, we don't know. Ali Forsyth coming up to have a look, to examine. So I just wonder, Brendan, whether that bowl behind the head of Australia, is it actually worth now 1, 2, 3? Well,
just saw Ali Forsyth signal 1. So, and that came from obviously as one of his teammates. He was sort of asking with 1, seemed to get a positive response. So maybe they are just holding the 1 shot New Zealand here.
Well, that being the case, I'm sure we'll just see the draw from Forsyth. Looks to be out on that wider line, just to know how far it's going to come back. And going to get all the way down to count. Has to get past the front bowls, is not going to. So, as Brenton said, the indication was that it was one to New Zealand. They got the old fingers out, having a over the top of the bowls, having a look.
Yeah, Wayne Rooniger doing the honours, I think it was, or Aaron Sheriff, in fact. Aaron Tees. So many Aarons, obviously, in this Australian side. 3 of the 5 men.
One down is the call.
It is Aaron Tees.
You wouldn't get that very often, would you? 3 out of the 5 are all. So, the indication is it's 1 to New Zealand. As Aaron Sheriff now playing with a lot of weight to get to that shot bowl. Goes by.
So, 1 to New Zealand. I think we may have a measure here, though, to see if it is perhaps more than 1. But it's a much shorter length in, so it can be very deceiving. I think it's just the 1. Oh, no, it wasn't. It was certainly more than 1. It was 4. 4. So 9-5. Yeah, it's hard to tell from the angles, but it certainly seemed like there was gesturing just 1 being, or maybe it was just Arely Forsyth was saying just add another 1 to the count. I'm not sure, but yeah, 9-5 it is now after another end played, and after 7 now of the 15, and a good bounce back from New Zealand after dropping that 5 a couple of ends ago.
Certainly was, and I think we've just seen a bounce back as well from the men's singles with Aaron Wilson. You might be able to update what the score is.
Yeah, 11-8 I believe it is now. Shannon McElroy of New Zealand up against Aaron Wilson, the Commonwealth Games champion, in that race to 21. In the women's fours, Australia 9-7 up. And in the women's singles, Kelsey Cottrell of Australia is leading Joe Edwards of New Zealand 12-10 in that first to 21 matchup.
And I see in that women's fours as well, Brendan, I just note Wendy Jensen with the mat, so it would appear New Zealand may well have scored on that last end as we watched that first bowl of Crystal Leaves over the head, sitting down and behind the jack by just over the centre line. Good opening bowl from Lalive.
Yeah, and you are right. Wendy Jensen with the mat, and it's 2 for New Zealand. So the women's fours are now all level. 9 all after, I believe, 7 ends of that contest.
That was somewhat of a strange shot. You'd say then, Brendan, with Aaron Sheriff being 4 down when he played that drive. You thought the logical shot would have been then, knowing you're 4 down, to try and draw to save as the leave draws a front toucher right alongside the jack. That's the sort of start you want when you've just scored a 4 and a leading 9-5. That's the sort of start that your skip wants, that's for sure. Well done by Crystal Leave. Great start on this, the 8th of 15 ends.
As Rudiger comes under the centre line and short as well, so unable to respond to those 2 great bowls from Crystal Leave. And New Zealand, after picking up a 4 on the previous end, very good position once more, now on the 8th. The halfway stage of this men's fours matchup.
So Mike Kernahan playing out on that wider side, and Ellie Forsyth quite happy with that, so we'll see now. Corey Wedlock, he'll endeavour to get down to the New Zealand counting bowls, the leave bowls, and sit straight away, trying to reach to them, but just going to hang out on that wide side. 2 shots is the indication from Ellie Forsyth. New Zealand holding as Kernahan will come down on his backhand. He plays his 2nd bowl on this, the 8th end, and he certainly narrowed his line down to get inside the Australian bowl. Comes outside is also just going to break towards the head now, and is going to sit clean on top of the Australian bowl, still lane 2. Wedlock will try and make contact with that front bowl of New Zealand, try and push the jack back to where those 2 Australian bowls are sitting, and that's the way it's breaking down towards the head now. Just goes past, just had to get a touch on that, Brenton, and that jack would have moved straight to where those 2 yellow bowls are. So Gary Lawson,
very good effort, wasn't it, from Wedlock, not far away at all. You can see exactly what he was trying to do, and he shook his head as he made his way down the green because he knew he wasn't far away. Lawson now again on the backhand, just trying to sit, no doubt, on those Australian bowls.
That's the target area for sure, around those two Australian bowls. So, indication quickly from Aaron Sheriff to Aaron Tees. You play exactly the same as what Corey Wedlock did. Play that same sort of reaching weight to try and make contact. Onto the New Zealand bowl, move the jack.
This looks like it's in the
Close
area.
This one, I can assure you that. Gets onto the crystal leaf bowl, sits alongside it, and that'll make shot. One down is the indication from Ali Forsyth. So now Gary Lawson can sit on that. What is the shot bowl, or get a touch on the jack. On the backhand is Lawson. Just going to question that line though, and it's under the line as it breaks down towards the head.
Doesn't have the weight either.
No, it did not.
Not the desired result there. So Tees with his first, earning the shot for Australia. And now trying to add to the count if he can. And turn this end on its head.
And certainly trying to add to the head, and also he can count on that side and give some cover around where those two New Zealand darker bowls are sitting. So Ali Forsyth now, he'll try and get down to either sit on the Aaron Tees shot bowl or get a touch on the jack where the Crystal Leaf bowl is sitting just outside the centre line, with New Zealand leading 9-5 after 7 of 15 ends, as the skips change over for Ali Forsyth to play his first bowl on this 8th end.
And I'll keep you up to date with the other matches as well in progress. 3 other matches in the second session of the first Trans-Tasman test here at Club Helensvale. Bringing some score updates at the end of this end.
So Ali Forsyth just slips by, all but made shot of that. It was only a bowl away from getting that touch on the jack.
Yeah, maybe shot that from Ali Forsyth.
Well, we'll see. So Sheriff going to play on his backhand to try and sit on the Forsyth bowl or get a touch to the jack. It's on a good line as this bowl of Sheriff. He's going to sit on the Australian bowl, turn another one in and over, and he's made shot of it. Corey Wedlock very quickly indicates that shot. And they're so good, aren't they, Brendan, when there's bowls around the head, they can just play with that little bit of searching weight, turn bowls in, turn bowls out. And Ali Forsyth, he'll endeavour to, on picking, play the same sort of line to get the same sort of result as what we saw Aaron Sheriff get with his first bowl. And we are. Forsyth is on his forehand. One down. Leading 9-5. So watch this bowl. It's going to run short or under the centre line.
Now a bit of an opportunity here for Australia.
Certainly
if they can
is.
play it back to those other Aussie bowls, can Aaron Sheriff.
He gets a touch on the back of the jack, which is what he's looking for, or gets the New Zealand bowl. And he touched the New Zealand bowl, in fact, turned the New
That
Zealand
could happen. That's the other result. So from holding one, the misfortune goes against Aaron Sheriff. Playing that way last time, playing that way, Ali Forsyth got a big dose of luck, and more luck for New Zealand this time. It's against, though, Aaron Sheriff. So should be another one for New Zealand. 10-5. They now lead after 8 of the 15 ends in this men's fours matchup. The rink alongside men's singles, Shannon McElroy now leading Aaron Wilson 13-8. And we also have women's fours, still 9 apiece in that contest. And we're going to opportunity shortly to bring you the score from the women's singles, and it is Kelsey Cottrell of Australia who is leading New Zealand's Joe Edwards. I think the score is about to change there. Kelsey Cottrell adding another single to her score, 15-10 in that race to 21 women's singles. So if you have just joined us and unaware what happened in the first session, it was a good start for New Zealand. They won 3 of the 4 matches. The men winning both of theirs in the pairs, 18-15, and the triples, 16-9. The women's triple also had a big win, 24-9. The women's pair, though, losing 22-12 to Australia. So New Zealand leading both Trans-Tasman contests after the opening session on shot differential for the women, and 2-0 for the men. Of course, it's the second session now of 3, so pretty much halfway through the day's play. And I can report as well, so far so good with weather. We're expecting showers and rain today. Has stayed away, and let's hope it does for the other half of the session of the day's play. We started a bit earlier this first Trans-Tasman test to try and beat the weather, and that's worked out.
Watch this bowler, Chris Leaves now trying to get under the Wayne Rudiger bowl. He did move the jack as well, made shot of it. Two good bowls there by the New Zealand lead. You'll see there, one New Zealand bowl sitting right on the centre line. The jack sitting alongside it. So New Zealand now, 10-5, as we watch Rudiger bowl, Wayne Rudiger bowl break down towards trying to get to the Chris Leave bowl, and just fall short of it. So we'll see now, Kernahan, who'll play on his backhand. So except really for one end, New Zealand have held themselves. I think they've played the game pretty well, very well in fact. In that last end though, we did really see Brennan the shot which Aaron Sheriff played. The New Zealand bowl really did a whole 360 to roll back into the head to get shot. So a bit fortuitous, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah, they've had a bit of luck, that's fair to say, playing away from the clubhouse the last couple of ends. Now they're playing towards clubhouse here at Club Helensvale. But New Zealand in the area to capitalise on it.
So Mike Kernahan now, he'll try desperately to get past that Chris Leave bowl. He'd be quite happy if he can get another bowl and for it to be over the head. But in fact, it's going to come up fractionally short, and we'll see Wedlock, no doubt. Corey Wedlock will endeavour to play to the Wayne Rudiger bowl, turn that into the head, and in doing so would turn the Chris Leave bowl out of the head.
Shannon McElroy just picked up a 3 on his last end in the men's singles, so he's now leading 16-8 over Aaron Wilson.
And as we said, again, a wee bit fortuitous there for New Zealand. Corey Wedlock virtually played that perfectly, but just got the wrong side of the Australian bowl, moved it out of the head completely, and took that shoulder away for Australian to work off. So now it's imperative for New Zealand, definitely holding the shot. So Lawson will play down to where the Chris Leave shot bowl is, endeavour to get a touch on the jack and move it, try and move it in behind to ensure that New Zealand as well have a back bowl. Watch this Lawson bowl now. Going to break in towards the head, has to get inside this bowl, not quite. And again we see the indication very quickly to Aaron Tees from Aaron Sheriff, get down here, reach that bowl. It's certainly what he's trying to do. It looks to be quick on the wide side.
Yeah, he doesn't like it. You can see from his body language, he was almost swatting it away, saying, what was it doing with that one? Forget about that one, let's move on to the next one.
So I'm picking, we'll see. The touch on the jack really is what New Zealand want to move that shot away from the Australians that they can play down towards. So now Lawson going to the back, sensible play. Saying we can see what Australia are going to play, so we're going to put some insurance in at the back. Aaron Sheriff indicating to Tees, go quick at it, and that's exactly what he's doing. But he's going to get the outside of it, I think, because he got that. Well, we'll have to wait and see who's got the shot now, Brendan, because bowls went
flying
all over the place.
Yeah, certainly cleared out 2 New Zealand bowls, including the shot bowl of New Zealand.
Looking from there, it looks like 2 to Australia when one looks at the screen, but as you rightly said earlier on, these angles can play a bit of havoc.
It was good execution though by Tees. His skip still to play. He's got rid of the shot bowl, which is the most important one to get rid of, and obviously there's a lot of room for both players to play into, and he's changed the head now. So
gust of wind comes through just as that Ali Forsyth was about to deliver his bolt on the backhand, just steps back from the mat, and he'll deliver it now on his backhand. And looking from here, it looked like Australia with the shot, but not going to come back from there, one wouldn't think. You could see it battling that wind out there on that wider side, and it did. So Sheriff, what is his forehand very quickly into his work. Trying to slow it down by the looks as it breaks in towards the head. Can't quite see.
I think it's just finished up right in front of Mike Kernan's right leg, so almost alongside the other. There you go. Just see a bit of it between the legs of Lawson and Kernahan.
So here we've got now Ali Forsyth playing his second and last bowl, and again it's going to hang out on that wide side. And get the
hands on hips from
Teapot.
Yeah, Ali Forsyth, wasn't it? Because certainly the wind affected the air and just struggling with it.
And looks like 3.
Yeah, still talking to himself on the mat as Ali Forsyth at top of the screen there. Not happy with himself. He's still got a bowl to play. There's Aaron Sheriff, but Ali Forsyth already ticked over the ends on the scoreboard and already resigned to dropping a number here.
So here's Aaron Sheriff after New Zealand were holding the advantage in this head. A very good drive from Aaron Tees.
Oh, he's unfortunate there. He's come up nothing, couldn't add to the count. So 1, and then we'll see if there's any further. Just the 1 perhaps.
Well,
they go 2. The scoreboard's already changed to 2 by Ali Forsyth. So 10-7. Now New Zealand's lead is cut to after 9 of the 15 ends. Men's 4s matchup. Shannon McRoy now only 3 away from winning his contest. He's leading Aaron Wilson in the men's singles, 18-8. In the women's singles, Kelsey Cottrell now to a big lead, 17-10 in the race to 21 over Joe Edwards. So Australia up there. Australia's also up in the women's 4s, 10-9. They're leading after 7 of the 15 ends in that contest. So New Zealand up in both men's matches, Australia up in both women's matches.
Very tight encounter now. This is turning out to, and this as we get down to the crunch ends, so to speak, in most of these games. Of course, 15 ends in the 4s, and the men's 4s are playing 10 at their 10th end, and the women's 4s are in fact a few ends behind that. And Kelsey Cottrell sitting on 17, of course, can go out from there, and Shannon McElroy sitting on 18 in a strong position. So things still looking pretty good for the New Zealand side. As we watch the Wayne Rudiker bowl now, his opening bowl sits right alongside the jack front touch-up by the Australian lead, as New Zealand lead 10-7, 10-7 New Zealand leading after 9 of 15 ends. Here's Crystal Leaf now on his backhand.
Yeah, interesting here with Shannon McElroy, very close to getting on the board in the men's singles. This is Aaron Wilson picks up a single. Aaron Wilson won all 4 of his men's singles matches in the Trans-Tasman test in November, the 3-test series then against Andrew Kelly and Jamie Hill, who played for New Zealand in the absence of Shannon McElroy, but the world champion so far having a big influence, of course. This morning in the first session of play, one with Gary Lawson in the men's pairs, now looking to continue his form in the men's singles.
So, another good bowl from Wayne Rudiker, and that's seen now Crystal Leaf change his hand, go to the forehand side, and as it breaks down towards the head now, coming in towards the centre line, and a finish right on the centre line and behind the head.
Yeah, pretty good bowl that from Crystal Leaf. Of course, from where he was standing, couldn't really see the jack.
It leaves the option now, of course, for Mike Kernahan. He can come down on his backhand and try and squeeze between those 2 bowls to get to the jack. And Forsyth saying to him, yeah, we can make contact now onto that shot bowl. We've got 2 bowls of Crystal Leaves on that side of the ring. Make contact onto the shot bowl.
And that's no doubt why Corey Wedlock went down there as well with his previous bowl to give Australia something.
Great attempt here from Mike Kernahan, just going to sit outside the centre line, but another close bolt on the head, and
you'd think would certainly have cut the count from 2-1.
So Corey Wedlock now, he doesn't like that bolt, and that's certainly under the line. So one turn onto the shot bowl is the call from Ellie Forsyth. You make shot of it, Jack will move. So here is Mike Kernahan, holder of 25 Dunedin titles, and a number of New Zealand titles, and of course part of the winning side that won the World Fours 4 years ago in Christchurch with Ali Forsyth, Blake Signal and Mike Nagy. And Kernahan doing his utmost to try and make sure that his name is there when the selectors announce that team to try and defend that world title won in 2016, in Christchurch. So indication still to Lawson, the number 3 now, play down to the shot bowl. Movement of the jack certainly in favour of New Zealand, Brenton.
Absolutely. Now those two bowls there, especially the one just in that centre line, Crystal Leave bowl, is looking the players, the goings on and the men's singles match up, knowing that Shannon McElroy's only 3 away from wrapping up the contest. And we saw Aaron Wilson just move the jack to near the ditch.
There's the bowler, Lawson, trying to get that contact and just slipped through that port. Another bowl in the catching pen there.
And you see the round of applause from Ali Forsyth, because while he didn't hit the target, he was so close in the target. It was a very good effort from Gary Lawson.
Only centimetres away, really, Brendan, from getting the perfect result. And it's important here for Australia. They get another bowl in around the head. And this might slip right through the gap and give, in fact, by accident, a back bowl to Australia. But I wonder now whether we'll see a change of hand by New Zealand. No, they're still going to try and get that contact onto the shot bowl to move the jack. Lawson with his second bowl on this, the 10th of 15 ends. Very close with his first bowl. As the bowl now breaks down towards the head, trying to get that touch onto the shot bowl. Just went past by a whisker.
Again, not far away. 2 fine efforts from Gary Lawson.
See the measure out in that men's singles, and Shannon McElroy with the mat.
On match point now, so 20 years on. I think Aaron Wilson, from memory, is on 9 or 10. Can't quite see the scoreboard at the moment, but Shannon McElroy, 1 shot away.
So it'll be interesting to see what Ali Forsyth elects to do here. Whether he may endeavour to search down to get a cannon off the bowls, which they're looking at.
Or do you just go,
Well,
we're going to have the last bowl here. If I try and draw this, it would be a quite magical bowl, but if I can draw this, that would give me the shot. And then put the pressure back on Aaron Sheriff.
New Zealand have played that shot with 4 bowls so far, so one would think that they would lean towards the playing again with that bowl. And of course, what has been said by Lawson, you can get the inside of one of those bowls as well, and which would get a cannon across possibly onto the jack or the other bowl of Australia. So as we watch now, Forsyth, he's playing with a lot more weight, coming down now, trying to get that shot that we just spoke about, and he did, and moved the jack across, exactly what we spoke about, Brendan.
Wow. Wonderfully executed as well. If that was the plan, that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, Gary Lawson said we've got the cannon off the side of that. So New Zealand lane 2, and no doubt we'll see Sheriff Blaymouth reaching weight, trying to get down to what is those two counting bowls of New Zealand. Got rid of one of them, but that certainly would be shot to New Zealand.
Yeah, and Ali Forsyth with the last bowl of the end, a chance to make it 2, or maybe even 3 if he can somehow move it towards that bowl out to the left, just in front of, well, was in front of Gary Lawson's left foot.
And that's a shot down on the forehand. If we get a touch on the jack, it's certainly advantageous to New Zealand. And it was well played, that run shot by Ali Forsyth. That cannon that was there to be played to, as long as you had the weight. And you watch this bowl just going to fall under it, but it's another end gone, and it's a 1 to New Zealand. And well played. Weighted shot by Forsyth that gave them that one resulted shot.
Thumbs up all round there for the New Zealand skip, Ali Forsyth. He was able to execute there with Australia holding shot, turned it around in New Zealand's favour. So at least 1 on the board, I assume. It will be confirmed just as the 1. And it should be 11-7 now after 10 of the 15 ends. Shannon McElroy, 29. He leads in the men's singles, race to 21. It's now 10 apiece in the women's fours between Australia and New Zealand after 8 of the 15 ends, so just over halfway in that match. So they're a couple of ends behind our men's fours match. And Kelsey Cottrell in the women's singles leading 18-12. And I believe it is shake hands time now in the men's singles. As Shannon McElroy, the world champion, getting the better of the Commonwealth Games champion, 21-9, and that's after Aaron Wilson won all 4 of his singles matches at the last Trans-Tasman. World champ's back, and he gets the better of Aaron Wilson, and another important point. So far for the New Zealand men, that's 3-0.
That was a big statement by Shannon McElroy. You know, he said in an interview with you yesterday, Brenton, I think it was, that he'd virtually been off the green for a few weeks, since the Bowls 3-5 finals, with the birth of his second child and having a break, and of course not playing in the Nationals and not playing in the last Trans-Tasman and the multi-nations. And he's come back, and Aaron Wilson, of course, the Commonwealth Games champion, and that's a resounding statement, I think, made by Shannon McElroy. And it's certainly a big confidence booster for New Zealand. Certainly it's only early days, I agree entirely with that, but it's about getting that confidence booster, which perhaps we didn't quite have in that last Trans-Tasman series, and a win like that, I feel, just gives New Zealand that confidence boost.
Well, if the men's 4 hold on here, they win the first test. So that's how important that point is from Shannon McElroy. Of course, they were beaten in all 3 tests.
Correct.
In the last Trans-Tasman. So if they convert here, holding an 11-7 lead, 5 ends to play. This is the 11th end of 15 in progress now. So it just shows in New Zealand before the final session, chance to wrap up the first test, which would be massive.
Certainly would be. And Crystal Lee holding shot. So it's a Kernahan bowl. It's the shot. Good header again, set up by New Zealand. As we watch now, Australia number 2, Corey Wedlock, this ball going to drift down under that centre line. Kernahan, he'll try now to sit on that Wayne Rudiger bowl. Touch on the jack around the corner would certainly be beneficial to New Zealand. And well done to Shannon McElroy on winning his singles. Great start. As we watch this bowl, Mike Kernahan's now breaking down towards the jack, sitting on the bowl, and just got a touch on it. But unlucky. But certainly went to a good home. Corey Wedlock urging this second bowl on as it breaks down towards the head. And if you got a touch on the jack, that may help New Zealand, in fact.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with these shorter ends, obviously, with camera angles and
Certainly
everything,
is.
as to who's actually got. Obviously, the Crystal Leave bowl is right, pretty much in line with the jack, but you can see how far it is actually from the jack, isn't it? It's a good 1.5 foot, even though the camera angle makes it look like it's sitting on it. So from that angle, you favour the Australian bowls, but
So here's now the Lawson bowl trying to get to those Australian counting bowls or the back of the jack around the corner, and that's exactly what he did. It was on. Either he got the bowls or he got the back of the jack and moved it around the corner across to where the New Zealand bowls were.
Oh, there's no doubt now it's New Zealand holding at least one. I think at 2 or 3 perhaps, maybe even 4.
Oh, biggie in this. So a lot of bowls to come, of course, but New Zealand holding a strong position on the head. So Aaron Tees, he'll play on his forehand. There's New Zealand holding the shot, trying to break down towards those New Zealand counting bowls. Looks to be on a good line to the jack. Is he going to sit on the bowl and get a feather? And he does. That'll make shot of it and a toucher.
Beautiful bowl, that from Aaron Tees. Just seeing Gary Lawson execute, get a little feather on the jack, move it towards the New Zealand bowls of Lalive and Kernahan. And well, look at that, expertly done by Tees. Getting a touch off the short New Zealand bowl, sitting right on the jack, a toucher himself. And now, turning the tables really on New Zealand. Now New Zealand again, forced to reply.
And here's now Gary Lawson's bowl, which is going to run under the head. We're seeing a pretty high standard here with these international players. Lawson will be disappointed with that. He was certainly under green right from the start. But it's imperative, of course, now for Australia that they now get another bowl on the head, because although New Zealand are one down, certainly their chance to build. Just repeating, Shannon McElroy has just defeated Aaron Wilson, the Australian singles player. McElroy winning that first singles rubber by 21 shots to 9. 21-9 to Shannon McElroy.
And in the women's singles, Kelsey Cottrell now just 2 shots away from beating the 2-time Commonwealth Games champion and Joe Edwards. 19-12 it is. Cottrell over Edwards, 10 apiece in the women's fours between Australia and New Zealand after 8 of the 15 ends there.
So here's now Forsyth on his backhand, the left hand up, and try and play down with that reaching weight to the jack or the shot bowls. Gary Lawson, it's on the wide side. You can see 3/4 of the way down, and he in fact just ran another Australian bowl into the head, and which may well count as 2. We don't know at this stage, but definitely Australia hold him. And Forsyth's only shot really is to play with that, I think, with more weight to try and get to those Australian bowls. And we'll see. Sheriff, is he going to draw another or try and get to the back? And he's happy to get past the head, and so is his Australian teammates. They applaud that. And Gary Lawson scratching his head. Ali Forsyth coming to have a look. What do we play here? I think he's got to play with more weight to hold it up under that line. Kernton having a look as well. And I'm sure New Zealand will be far better to try and play with more weight rather than sort of reaching weight, because it's very difficult on these greens with the wind, although the wind has died down a bit. And as we come to the end of this round 2 and one more round to go, of course, we may be fortunate and skip by the adverse weather.
Drive coming here from Ali Forsyth, and he manages to kill it, and so he'll be respotted at the 2 metre mark. And who has the deepest bowl here? Is one of those bowls stayed in play, as we won't get to see much of the replay because of all the players in the way, but everything goes flying after this bowl from Ali Forsyth, which is an ultra slow-mo from the outside. There it goes.
Well, I saw a New Zealand
in the meantime,
bowl.
Aaron Sheriff has played his bowl, and so don't really know what the situation is here.
One to Australia.
One to Australia.
That was the indication from Aaron Sheriff as he walked back that it was 1 to Australia.
So 11-8 now after 11 of the 15 ends. New Zealand men's 4 skipped by Ali Forsyth, still leading the Aaron Sheriff skipped Australian 4.
Yeah, the board's been changed now. You're definitely 11-8. And see Aaron T standing up there now with his skip as we come down to the back end of this game. And of course, as you rightly said, Brendan, this game now really could decide the winner of the first test.
Yeah, or a draw as well would be good enough for New Zealand to win the first test. They've won 3 matches already today. There are 6 matches for both men and women. It's the 4th match of them, so New Zealand could win or draw this. They win the first test. As I mentioned, they lost all 3. And very disappointing overall, and for the most part, apart from that 3rd test, which I think they drew and then lost on shot differential.
It was drawn, yes.
They were really outclassed in the first 2.
So Ellie Forsyth saying to Chris Lee, "Oh, slow down, boys, slow down." And that's going right to the ditch. You'll be disappointed with that. Jack's in that in-between length, between the 2 metre mark. And it's that sort of dangerous length. It's not short, it's not long, sits in the middle. As we watch now the Wayne Rudiker second bowl on this, the 12th end. So it's important now that the leave gets a bowl close and we don't get to one of those ends where we dropped that 5 earlier on, where we had wayward bowls and it left the door open for Australia. As we watch this bowl now, the second bowl, Chris leaves. This is a need to get the jack. It's going pretty quick. He's fortunate. He's fortunate, really. I'd say he ran into the jack on the way through, and stayed with it and sits down in front of the jack. So
yeah, I think a wry smile from Ellie Forsyth to Aaron Sheriff and a bit of a shake of the head that he couldn't quite believe the luck there of Chris Leave as he found his way to the jack and trailed it back towards the 2 metre mark.
It was certainly going too quick. Of course, the great thing for New Zealand with that bowl, it had been a toucher, so it does, of course, if it gets driven into the ditch and the jack gets moved around, which is a chance of course, that Chris Leave bowl remains that of a live bowl. So Mike Kernahan, jack's been moved right off the centre line. Kernahan now trying to draw a second as it breaks down towards the head. How far is it going to run? Ellie Forsyth just urging it to stop, and will stop now. It's a pretty handy bowl from Kernahan. And looking quickly over the top of the monitor, it may well be 2, but it could all change with one bowler. Watch this bowl of Wedlock is going to be short. So here's the chance now for New Zealand to put the pressure on with 4 short bowls sitting up there from Australia. Here's now the chance for New Zealand to really put the pressure on the back end of the Australian side. Yeah,
absolutely. Of course, the first 2 bowls, the shortest 2 bowls, were pretty much right next to the jack good. Initially.
They were good bowls.
Until Chris Leave, as you say, ran into the jack and carried it back to where its current position is now.
Certainly was, had enough weight to reach the jack, that's for sure.
So New Zealand holding 2, you'd think, here.
When I looked over the top of the monitor, it looked like 2, but still plenty of room for that second shot for sure. As we watched Aaron Tees, the Australian number 3. How's the line of this bowl? This is on a pretty good line. This bowler tees it, breaks down towards the shot bowl or the jack, going to sit on the top of it and sits. Well, that actually makes it a wee bit safer, so to speak, for New Zealand. Brendan, the way how that toucher and the bowl of the jack and the bowl have moved around, it just sort of, in the front bowl, just protects the New Zealand bowl.
Well, yeah, because it's a toucher as well. So if
they
both go into the ditch, it's going to still remain in play, that bowl. As Lawson will just go around the back, and looks like he's got too much weight as well. So it's another one in the gutter for New Zealand.
So, of course, Australia, this is the 12th end of 15. Now desperately want to score 11-8. New Zealand lead, and this bowl of Aaron Tees is on the draw line, but going to hang out just fractionally on the wide side. So Gary Lawson, ideal opportunity here if he can draw to where Ellie Forsyth's standing. That will give New Zealand another counter as the skips will change over to play their 2 bowls on this, the 12th of 15 ends. And just repeating that, Shannon McElroy has defeated Aaron Wilson in the first singles rubber here at Club Helensvale.
So didn't quite get his weight right there. Got pretty much the line that Ellie Forsyth was asking for, but a couple of yards too much weight there, so it's a non-counter, but not in a bad home if something does change and the Australians are able to move the jack. So still that toucher from Crystal Leave, pretty much jammed onto the jack, holding shot. Aaron Sheriff now.
Looks on the wide side, and it is as it goes by. So it'd be great if New Zealand could build on this now, get another good scoring end with a 2 or a 3. Just makes that job all the harder.
Yeah, the ends are running out, obviously, for Australia because of that Shannon McElroy result. They need to win Australia to keep this first test alive for the men. Otherwise, New Zealand will win it.
And what a great confidence booster that would be as well, Brenton, because we know that still 2 more days to go, but it's really about just getting which was such a disappointing first Trans-Tasman series, getting back on track. New side out here today, and it just gives that confidence to them, the players, that because they are playing, of course. These boys, the Australian team, are the best in the world. As Ellie Forsyth Bowl just needs to get past. So there's no doubt if we take the Australian side, the Scottish men's side, England, Ireland, they're up there in the top few sides in the world. And of course, New Zealand as well. New Zealand, of course, the last World Championships, we won the pairs, won the singles with Shannon McElroy, and the fours with that side of Ellie Forsyth, Mike Kernahan, Blake Signal and Mike Nagy. And the men, of course, as well.
South Africa will be...
South Africa, yeah, that's always difficult with South Africa, but World Championships, you don't know what you're going to get. But the other thing which has also changed, Brendan, which is interesting, and we've seen this through the Asia Pacific and also the multi-nations, there is countries now who've got, if we take Malta as an example, who we saw perform well. We also saw at the Asia Pacific, the Indian women. So there's a lot of nations who may not be strong in all disciplines, but they certainly have got strength in individual disciplines. So, 24 countries will line up, of course, for the World Championships, and it's it's always a great event, the World Champs, and for New Zealand, of course, with it being it's a big funding event as well for New Zealand going forward as we move towards 2022. So this World Championships is. It's vital for New Zealand.
Yeah, very much looking forward to that. We'll be bringing you coverage of that event as well in late May and June, but a lot of water to go under the bridge as Ellie Forsyth tries to add another one. They're interested.
Gets the jack around the corner, that'll count. It could just had to move it.
I don't know if it's taken it enough.
He just had to move it.
I think it might only still be one.
If it went to there, it made 4 of it.
Yeah, if it moved a foot, then it certainly would have been a big number for New Zealand, and not far away. Ellie Forsyth was asking if it's 2. I think they're still measuring to see if it is a second or just the one for New Zealand. It's just the one.
Just the one.
Just the one for New Zealand. So Ellie Forsyth, close but not close enough. So 12-8 now after 12 of the 15 ends. This men's fours match up here. New Zealand, if they hold on, even a draw, be good enough for them to win this first test after they won both matches in the first session, in the men's pairs and the men's triples. Shannon McElroy winning the men's singles just moments ago.
Joe Edwards trailing Kelsey Cottrell now 19-14.
Yeah, so she's coming back. It was 19-11, so Kelsey Cottrell's been in that position before, near match point, and then Joe Edwards is fought back. And
we saw that firsthand, didn't we, Brent, in that particular match?
Yeah, indeed we did. At the last Trans-Tasman, that was in the third and final test at Broadbeach. The women's fours are pretty tight, 12-11. I believe New Zealand has just picked up a single on the 10th end of 15 in the women's fours, so that one looks like it's going to go down to the wire. And the women's test so far is level at 1 apiece, but New Zealand with the advantage on shot differential. But with the situation at the moment, with Australia leading both, obviously that would change, but a lot of play still to go on those, and we'll have the scores for you heading into the final session. And of course, we'll bring you up to date with all the action during this match over the final 3 ends of this men's fours contest as well. Is another touch-up from Chris Lalive. It just slides past the jack and ends up alongside Wayne Rudiger bowl with his second. He's going to get a toucher as well and push it towards the Chris Lalive bowl.
And Ali Forsyth indicating that that is the Chris Lalive bowl is shot. New Zealand lead 12-8. And we play end 13. And I just saw Kelsey Cottrell draw the shot. And I'm just going to say to Brendan, Joe Edwards was holding 3, in fact, when that shot was drawn. So Ali Forsyth indicating just wanted to get Mike Kernham bowl back another couple of inches. Didn't come back far enough. So New Zealand hold that lead 12-8. And as Brendan has said, New Zealand would have won this fours match. That would give them victory in the first test of 3 here in this very important Trans-Tasman. And I think Brendan, it's 11 years since New Zealand have won the Trans-Tasman in the men. It's either 11 or 12 years since.
It's incredible, isn't it? It really is. All those great New Zealand teams, you mentioned world champions here. You got 3 of them in this New Zealand 5. But the Trans-Tasman has been elusive. The women have had their fair share of Trans-Tasman success. Terribly unlucky at the end of November, where they actually won more matches than the Australians over the 3 tests, but losing the second and third tests on shot differential.
So here's the movement of it. No, it didn't move the jack. So it's imperative here now at New Zealand that Gary Lawson gets a bowl in amongst these nest of 4 bowls of Australia, because a trail on the jack through to those 4 Australian bowls would certainly be advantageous as we watch this bowl. While Gary Lawson's trying to get into those back of those bowls, but in fact it's going to go by, and we'll see now. Aaron Tees, he'll certainly be on his backhand trying to either dislodge the Chris Lalive bowl or get it touched on the jack. It's on its way. Is the Tees bowl, it's under the head. You can see the weight, searching weight that they're playing for to try and get that result. Gary Lawson very quickly onto the mat. He knows what shot he's got to get played, get past that Chris Lalive front bowl and then draw in. He's certainly on a tighter line than he was with his first bowl. How far is it going to come back towards these counting Australian bowl, or the Australian bowls in the catching pen? And that's a good home from Gary Lawson there. Just nestles in amongst the 4 Australian bowls. And Tees play his last bowl on this, the 13th end.
It was needed, wasn't it, that Lawson bowl, because
Certainly
all those Australian bowls there, and this is what Tees will try and do, move towards them.
And he's done just that.
Gets rid of the Lalive bowl, and if that Lawson bowl wasn't there, there'd be possibly 5 for Australia.
3 down now is New Zealand. And Forsyth, shouldn't muck around with that, I wouldn't think. Play with a lot of weight. You play with fragile weight, you're just a chance of nipping under the head. I think he's got to play with full weight on his forehand, on his backhand, on the drive. Is Forsyth swinging that arm back and forwards on the launching pad. It's on its way. Looks to be on the. Is it going to get? No, he touched one of the bowls, and that just moved it in closer to the head.
Yeah, made it slightly harder for his next bowl, hasn't it? Because he's fallen in that bowl. It's going to be harder to move now.
Just removed the target bowl, or reduced it by 1 bowl as far as your vision's concerned to it. So he's now got to virtually, the next drive has got to be a bit further in, aiming towards the second and third of those Australian bowls. Doesn't want to aim at the very front bowl, because that's a chance of going outside it.
Sheriff going for a bit of cover, and if the end is killed, it's going to be pretty close to being a shot bowl, that last bowl of his. And now Ali Forsyth wants to have a chat with the fellow Brains Trusts of Mike Kernahan and Gary Lawson as they meet mid-green for a bit of a discussion. All four of the Aussie players to the right of camera. New Zealand players, Kernahan and Forsyth, and then with Lawson over the head.
So you'll note, Gary Lawson, you would have heard me say before that the target is the second and third bowl, and that's exactly where Gary Lawson's trying to point to. But I hope the draw shot is so hard, and that's sort of like an indication he might play that, but it's got to be so precise. And Forsyth is a very good attacking player. And I still think that drive down to that second or third Australian bowl, he swings the arm again. It's going to be with plenty of velocity on its way. It's outside the target.
He's missed again.
Outside all the way.
And now with Aaron Sheriff to play the final bowl of this end. Chance to add to the count. If he can somehow get rid of the Lawson bowl.
Well, there's a chance if he was to play the yard of weight down through there, he get that bowl, it would just pop straight out of the head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'll see whether he's endeavouring to play that. It doesn't look as though he's happy with the 3, and he's going to just try and add to 4 to lock the game up at 12 all. But he's not going to.
Hangs it out very wide. So assuming that's a 3, we'll wait, and it was a 4 anyway. So we have tied the game up. So that was actually playing for 5. So big end for Australia. 12 apiece now. After 13 of the 15 ends. 2 ends remaining. We're all locked up. And of course, a draw would be good enough for the New Zealand men, but they won't be satisfied with that, as Wayne Rudiger just gave up the jack there.
Well,
so that's finally they got the mat back, and then the jack into the ditch, and now Leave can play shorter length again. They can play and determine the length and have it much shorter as they would prefer.
And that's certainly the way to play it. But I just point out though, Brendan, that you know, Australia have scored their 12 shots. They've scored 9 of those on 2 ends. 5.
They've only scored on 4 ends, isn't it?
That's correct. So you know, on the 15th, of course, they 5, and then on the 13th end, the 4. New Zealand have held the game, and as we spoke about before, a couple of loose ends, and it can just, you know. So now New Zealand, you notice when we dropped that 5 before, we scored straight away. We went 1-4-1 ourselves. So New Zealand just got forget about the 4, back themselves. They've outscored the Australians. Let's draw the shot, boys, and get on with it. 2-wayward drives from Ali Forsyth, and just didn't work out. So here's the Leave bowl getting towards the jack, but going past 1 metre and a bit. Wayne Rudiger, good opening bowl on his backhand, the South Australian player.
The women's singles game is still ongoing. Joe Edwards has tightened it up somewhat, so it is now 20-15. Kelsey Cottrell leading Joe Edwards in the race to 21, so Cottrell just 1 away, but she's been there for an end or 2 now. Still playing the 10th end in the women's fours match, which is now somehow 4 ends behind the men's fours contest. Australia still leading 12-10. I believe that scoreboard maybe needs to be updated. I'll give you an update on the score shortly. A couple of bowls remaining on what we believe is the 10th end.
Of course, Brendan, on a time limit here as well now, aren't they? So I'm not sure as well. They don't want to get too far behind in ends, because I don't know what the time finishing time is, but
yeah, I think they will be probably put on the clock in about 15-20 minutes or so. So
if those are the number of ends, they've got to sort of rattle things along a bit. So Australia now holding 2 shots. As we watch this bowler, Mike Kerhans needs to get a generous touch, and it does. Gets a feather, sits in amongst the Australian bowls. So Corey Wedlock now quickly into his work. Breaking down towards the jack as the Wedlock bowl. Going to get just the slightest feather on it. And all of a sudden we're seeing the Australians drawing with some confidence. Kernahan now on his backhand. definitely down as the New Zealand side, and we're locked up 12 all as we play in 14. As I watch this bowler, Mike Kernan's now break down towards the head.
Turns his back on it.
Doesn't have the weight. Had finished on the centre line, but well short of weight. So here's Aaron Tees now with Australia holding. So it's all of a sudden we had a big turnaround after that 4. And Tees drawing just down in front of the jack. So now Gary Lawson is going to have to draw on his backhand, trying to get to that shot bowl. Touch on the jack. Can't afford to be short.
Joe Edwards has picked up another shot, so 2016 now in the women's singles, race to 21 against Kelsey Cottrell. Cottrell still leading.
So Gary Lawson just sat outside the Australian bowls. So looking at the monitor here, it looks like 3 to Australia with those. Gary Lawson will try again down on his backhand. As we watch this bowl of tees come in towards the jack, and this is getting difficult. So Ali Forsyth saying, draw to my feet, let's get to what is the 3rd shot of Australia. On the backhand is Gary Lawson. Imperative now that the New Zealand number 3 gets some bowl close for his skip. Breaking down towards the head now. How far is it going to hold up? Is it breaking down now towards the jack itself? Look at this bowl of Lawson's. Would you have a look at that, would you, Brenton?
Brilliant from Lawson. Is it enough to have grabbed a shot? We don't know. We can't tell from the camera angle. It's so close in between there. The jack is in between the... You can just see a tiny bit of the white jack coming out the left-hand side of the screen there. And so... It's in between the orange bowl of Gary Lawson and one of the Australian yellow bowls.
Certainly a magnificent bowl, and we get an idea of who's got the shot when we see the sort of weight. So you would think if New Zealand had the shot, that we'd see a bit of weight onto that front, because the jack could spring in favour out to the side to the Australians.
Yeah, now I think what Gary Lawson was indicating, that Ali Forsyth, as a left-hander, will play on his forehand and try and sit on the yellow bowl at the back, which may be the shot bowl.
Could still be the shot bowl. We'll see in but a moment, as Brendan rightly indicated. On the forehand is Forsyth. They'll try and get to the yellow bowl of Australia. Is it breaking in towards the head now? This is a pretty good attempt, this bowl here of Ali Forsyth, and just went past.
Yeah, not far away. Shakes his head, Ali Forsyth, but that was a fair effort.
It's a very, very good effort. That would indicate on that basis, you're right, Brendan, it's more than likely 1 to Australia. And they're not going to preempt anything until the bowls are played, but as you see the Sheriffs just go by. So Ali Forsyth asking, is my bowl 3rd shot? That's what it was. So obviously New Zealand are down. So here will be Forsyth trying to play down. You won't want to attack it too hard. Looks to be, is it on the wide side? Not sure, is it not going to come all the way? Australia grabbing the mat.
Yeah, that should be 1 for them. So 13-12, Australia now lead. So if the New Zealand have won the majority of ends in this contest, now with an end to play, it's Australia 13, New Zealand 12, as we now play the 15th and final end of this men's fours matchup. And the women's fours, they were an end behind on the scoreboard. It's now 12 apiece, Australia and New Zealand. So New Zealand picking up singles in the last couple of ends there. Jo Edwards is yet to shake hands, so she must still be hanging tough in the women's singles against Kelsey Cottrell, who's been on match point on 20 for a couple of ends now.
I can tell you that Jo Edwards is in fact holding the shot over there. In fact, got a front toucher sitting right on top of the jack. And because this is the first time in this men's fours side that Australia have been in front since the 5th end, when they when they scored that 5 and jumped to that 5-4 lead. So now, Crystal Eve, the message to you, don't be short as we see the first bolt of Wayne Rudiker, and as you rightly said, Brendan, a draw would suffice for New Zealand to give them the win in this first test.
Yep, so if they win the end, that'll be it. Of course, if it win the match or draw the match, that will do is Crystal Eve with his first, as we've seen with these longer ends, into the ditch.
We're right back on the 2 metre mark, which is the preferred length from the Australian side for sure. As we watch the Rudiger bolt, just going to go past the head slightly, or Jack Lever, in fact, it finishes on the opposite side. So here's the chance for Crystal Eve. Perhaps run into the Jack again and move it round the corner. But definitely Australia hold him as we watch Leave play his second bowl on this, the 15th and last end, and that's going to be short and under green. I'm disappointed with that. That's not what you need, and that's that.
2 more for Joe Edwards, sorry, Kevin, as well in the women's singles. So that's now getting very tight. 2018 now. She trails Kelsey Cottrell in the race to 21 women's singles. It's 12 apiece in the women's fours as well. So both of those women's fours matches, just like this men's fours match up here, going right to the wire.
So Mike Kernahan now to play his last bowl, his first bowl on that last end, the 15th. And it's on a good line, certainly on a better scoring line to the Jack as it breaks down now towards the Jack. Is it going to get the Jack or just go past to the Kernahan bowl? Just went past, and that'll sit there. I'm sure that's the shot bowl, as indicated by Ali Forsyth, sat in behind the Jack. Great bowl there by the New Zealand number 2 for sure. And it's all heating up here in this women's fours, women's singles, and the men's fours as we watch this bowl of Corey Wedlock's just go past. Ali Forsyth say, no, 1 down still is New Zealand. 1 down is the call from Ali Forsyth. So saying to Mike Kernahan, just beat your last bowl and you will have shot. So it's on its way, the New Zealand number 2. And there's a patch way up there on the green, and if you're through the middle of that, you're close to that, coming back to that centre line, and Kernahan's doing just that now. It just breaks its way all the way back towards the centre line.
Just ran out of steam, didn't it?
Just ran out. Great effort. But the head looking strong though for New Zealand, although we may be 1 down. There's a chance here for, of course, Gary Lawson. He can get the shot or play across the head, rest out the Australian bowl, sit underneath it. So we'll see. Imperative now for Aaron Tees as Mike Kernahan
he apologises.
He does. So we see Aaron Tees. Is he going to play the shot for New Zealand? He's just played it.
Yeah, well, that's what Gary Lawson was thinking about playing. Now he's like, oh, what do I play now? Yeah, that did not work out for Aaron Tees. I think he got the weight wrong, didn't he? I think that line was okay, but that weight.
Well, the story for New Zealand now is you leave the head alone. And if I was now Gary Lawson with your first bowl, I'd be endeavouring to get down into here to put some cover in
the Australian bowls.
Even if you're outside them, it doesn't really matter, but get down into here. The most likely place the Jack's going to go on that searching weight is over to there, over to where the Australian bowls are. Although it's not a straight line to the Jack because of the Mike Kernahan bowl, the line where the Mike Kernahan bowl is at. But Lawson, in fact, is going to play the backhand, I think. He's playing his forehand and playing down to get into this gap, I would hope. It looks to have a good speed on it as it comes past the Jack line now and sits down.
Well, there's the other option, because that almost cuts out the Jack into the ditch, doesn't it? Because that was the other thing that they, obviously Aaron Tees and Aaron Sheriff both very comfortable playing that.
So the best scoring chance, of course, now for Australia is to get the Jack over to where those bowls are. But the difficulty of that is where the front bowl of Mike Kernahan sits on the line to the jack would tend to see the bowl undercut, because you're going to have to play in a narrower line unless he goes pretty quick. But Gary Lawson has somewhat negated that from where his first bowl, which would be the deepest bowl on the rink, New Zealand trailing by 13 shots to 12.
And you've seen the pace really slow up now. Both sides, big discussions after nearly every bowl here.
I see New Zealand, the women's fours, have got the mat again. Just see Wendy Jensen with the mat.
And you'd think, given that we just heard a moment or so ago, a 15-minute time warning, so you think only 2 ends remaining there. So New Zealand in the lead. We'll see what the score updates to as that one goes into the ditch from...
Well, that was an interesting shot, because the drive, if one was to get the jack and kill it, the jack's going to still come back directly onto the 2 metre mark, Brenton, which is straight away would be exactly the same position as what we've got now, with New Zealand holding 2 shots. Now, that I still think now for New Zealand, leave this side of the head alone. You either get right to, we don't have to get right to the, well, get down to here perhaps, in case, but it's hard for the jack to go directly into the ditch because of where the New Zealand bowls are sitting. So be interesting to see the shot selection now from Aaron Sheriff, the Australian skip, as Lawson. And he's playing now the shot that we spoke about before, try and get down into the covering position of where there's 2 Australian bowlers which could come into the counting zone.
I think he's asked far too much of it, unfortunately. Started it out wide, it's not coming back, and the weight's going to carry it into the ditch. Yes.
It looks like Joe Edwards, another end finished.
And she still has the mat.
Still got the mat. Game's not completed, that's for sure.
So I think that's 2019 now. So that one you'd think will be finished within that 15 minute. 15 minutes. 2019 Kelsey Cottrell now of Australia over New Zealand's Joe Edwards. Already we've had Shannon McElroy winning as weight played by Aaron Sheriff.
Sheriff trying to get to the jack, got the kill, but the 2 metre mark belongs to New Zealand.
It does indeed. And that was the thing with the drive. It was more about trying to drive that jack into the ditch, but not have it killed. And it's been killed. So now he's just got one more bullet left in that gun of his, Aaron Sheriff.
No, the shot for New Zealand now is to draw, I would say, to this Australian bowl sitting out the side here. Sheriff will try and drive the outside of that, what is the shot bowl, for that to cannon onto the other bowl, the Gary Lawson bowl, take that out of the head, which would leave the side bowl to Australia being the shot bowl. So Ali Forsyth either draws inside there or it plays on the other hand to beat the line there, because that's the bowl that Sheriff will endeavour to drive. And he's playing out on what we said on that side to try and make sure that he has, in fact, what would be 3rd shot, should both of those bowls be dislodged.
Needs it to hurry, and it's not going to. It stops, hangs out wide. He will have the final bowl, of course, Ali Forsyth, and that's exactly, I think, what Sheriff's looking at. I think he was looking at to see whether it was the orange bowl of Lawson was the second, but I think that certainly looks like it would be the plan. Try and knock away that shot bowl of Kernahan. Hopefully also take the Lawson bowl with it, and that would leave this yellow bowl just to the right of pitcher, pretty much jack level as the shot bowl. Of course, Forsyth would still to play his last, but he'd have to draw, within a metre and a bit.
And then, of course, Ali Forsyth could just drive that bowl out with his last bowl. So it's on its way, the bowl of Sheriff, and it's gone.
Narrow. And so he's missed out, and so that should be shake hands time here. I think they're just working out whether New Zealand has 2 or just 1.
2.
It's 2. And now the Aussies are just going to have a look. Because if it is 2, then Ali Forsyth won't bother playing his final bowl. They're shaking hands. 2. It is 2. And New Zealand pick up a 2 on the 15th and final end to beat Australia 14-13 in the men's fours. And what that means is the Blackjacks men have won the first Trans-Tasman test here at Club Helensvale after being swept in November over the 3 tests. They have won 4 matches on the hop here to start this first test. First in the pairs and the triples this morning, now in the singles and fours. A great result for the Blackjacks men. 4-0, an unassailable lead, Kevin Hickland, in this first Trans-Tasman test.
Oh, it's been a superb display by the New Zealand side and on day one to date. And the thing that I really liked about the New Zealand fours side was the way how they actually played the game, how they built their heads. They struggled only really on 2 ends, and on those 2 ends they dropped a 5 and a 4. Other than that, they dropped a 2 and 2 singles. That to me highlights that you had a pretty good control of the game. It meant that your front went pretty well. In fact, held the front well. But more importantly, New Zealand didn't try and gamble to try and score big numbers. They played the game strategically, and full marks to the fours side of Crystal Eve and Mike Kernan, Ali Forsyth, and Gary Lawson, and the way how they it's a really, to me, Brenton, what the New Zealand side has showed today is that confidence is back. And I think that the side has started, well, it has, without any shadow of doubt, winning the first test. We started off well, and let's just hope now that our New Zealand women can also follow the same, and we build on that as throughout this whole Trans-Tasman series.
Well, Joe Edwards is holding. It's going to be whether Kelsey Cottrell can come up with a drive to deny Joe Edwards. And it's 2019, Kelsey Cottrell leading Joe Edwards in the race to 21 women's singles. The women's fours, New Zealand's leading 13-12 after 12 of the 15 ends there. And that's where we will leave you. We'll bring you up to date with the women's singles and the women's fours action at the start of our next session, which will start sometime before 6 p.m. New Zealand time. Will be our women's triples action, which we'll be bringing to you. The Caitlin Inch skipped women's triple up against Natasha Scott. Make sure you join us then.